Okay, welcome back to the Investigative Journal on this November 30th, 2016 day on our calendar. I'm your host, Greg Anthony. You're listening to FirstAmendmentRadio.com. You can catch my show every evening from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. That's Pacific time, and they also play the show at 11 a.m. Pacific time. If you can't get it there, go to my long-standing website at arcticbeacon.com, arcticbeacon.com, and you can get shows going back over a decade regarding what I call the Vatican-led New World Order. Okay, it's November 30th. Let me see here now. 30 days has September, April, June, and November. All the rest have 31 except that month, February. Well, okay, last day of November. My, how time flies. And you know, this month, February, I've never liked. It sticks out like a sore thumb. You never know how many days, 28, 29. And then to spell the darn thing. February? Why is the R there? February or February? Let's just get rid of the month anyway. But anyway, I've got a lot of important things to talk about today on the show. So hopefully I can get through them. I'm not sure if I can. It will be a miracle. But I will tell you this, that one story will lead to the other. I want to start out today by talking about the petition that I started regarding the Tony Alamo ministry. Now, the petition is on a separate website, and I've started along with a gentleman by the name of Robbie who got this thing going for me. We have a website called freepastortonyalamo.com. So you can go to let me look to see exactly what it is here. It's freetonyalamo.com. And from there, if you go to the top, you can click on the petition and sign it. We've got a lot of signatures and a lot of great comments. And let me read one here real quick, if I can go to this, because this is an interesting story that I want to get to and update what's going on in the petition. But first, I want to read this. One just came in, and you can sign it. You don't even have to give your name if you don't want to go public. And on the page of the petition, the name will be, of course, kept, so when we present this petition to the pardon attorney for Donald Trump, he'll understand that these are real people from all over the world that want this man released. Now, recently, one came in from Ted M. in New Hampshire, and he said, "I'm not a Protestant, but I feel it is a travesty that an 82-year-old Christian preacher is in jail on false charges by the government while illegal aliens get a free pass for actual crimes. President Trump, please pardon Pastor Alamo." And that's the sentiment that everyone who signed this petition seems to be telling me. And there's some great notes that everyone gives. When the people that want to give your name, you can also sign it anonymously so that no one sees your name on the front page of this petition. Now, what I want to get at is, just to recap what's happened, is that Tony Alamo and his ministry have been targeted for more than 40 years by U.S. government agencies, including but not limited to the FBI, the BATF, CIA, and the IRS. FBI informants have come forward with sworn testimony. They were hired to frame Pastor Alamo for his biblical and political views. This sworn testimony was not allowed in his 2008 criminal trial for violations of a federal statute called the Mann Act, in which close examination of the trial and appeal documents indicate a miscarriage of justice of the worst degree. Now, when we present this petition for a pardon for Tony to the pardon attorney in the Trump administration, we're going to give some details as far as why this was a travesty of justice and why this man should be released immediately. Now, furthermore, this ministry has been falsely depicted as a cult by the government officials, and an orchestrated media campaign of the ruling elite and Vatican-controlled powers in our government. Our goal is really to just get 82-year-old Pastor Tony Alamo released from prison immediately. He has already served more than 8 years of a 175-year sentence for crimes he did not commit. He is presently in poor health, legally blind, and needs proper medical care, which he is not receiving. Now, I want to make a point here that not only is Tony in jail or in prison, but the ministry has been targeted for extinction, a Christian ministry. And I've played I think it's about a 6-minute clip of what they're really all about. And I've spent years talking to these people and talking to the informants that were hired by the government to bring this ministry to its knees. So what they did was they took the children of this ministry away from their parents, and one parent even said the attorneys came to him and said, if you lie about Pastor Alamo, if you follow our story, you'll get your kids back right away. Now he couldn't do that because he knew the man for 40 years. And guess what? They didn't give his kids back. And that happened to over 40 children in this ministry that were just taken away, stolen. Now also they've started to then file civil cases against all the property that these people have worked for all their lives. And one of the biggest judgments, the biggest judgment in Arkansas history, over $500 million, was sanctioned by a judge against this ministry, basically stealing their property. Now, I've talked to some of the informants that were hired to bring this ministry down, and their goal was to first get any dirt they could on Tony, try to get him to buy weapons, try to get him to buy drugs, and nothing worked. And finally, a few of these agents said, this guy is squeaky clean. And in fact, one agent these guys were not allowed to testify that they were hired to frame Tony Alamo. Now, we're going to put that testimony into the record when we ask for this pardon, because Trump is talking about, allowing Christians. He understood many of it, and in some of his campaign rallies, he said Christians are being persecuted all over the world, and they're being persecuted right here in America. He said, you haven't had your rights. You've had your rights trampled on by the Obama administration. So we will see if Mr. Trump lives up to some of his campaign promises. Now, the point I want to make is that why did they come down on Tony Alamo and these people? Well, I believe it's very simple. They spoke about the Bible, which talks about in the book of Revelations that the Antichrist, or the first beast, is the Vatican organization in Rome. And they were not shy about telling Americans, really, everything that's going on here has a hidden agenda, and we want to get to the bottom of it. You cannot preach if you don't get to the truth. And so I believe the reason they targeted him was because he was really getting the word out regarding the Vatican and its control in our government worldwide. Millions of brochures for 40 years this man's passing out. I talked to him, and he was way ahead of his time. Back in the 80s, he was bringing people like Father Alberto Rivera, a Jesuit priest, to tell about the hidden agenda that's been going on ever since this country has been formed. That's the reason he's where he is. Now, the point I want to make is when we start looking at this, when we start looking at this ministry, we have to ask ourselves, where is the hypocrisy coming from? Where is the hypocrisy coming from? Why don't people understand what's going on in this country regarding the Vatican's role here and what they're doing? We've tried to expose it on this show for over a decade, and it never seems to get, mainstream attention. Now, let's go and talk about this. Now, we understand. Now, let's go to our media. Basically is at a low point. many people in this country, I would say 99% realize that they're getting shafted by the mainstream media. Now, we have a media now that's divided. We have the right wing and Fox News. We have the left wing and CNN. Let's just start out there, and the New York Times and the Washington Post. Now, they present their news from a left wing point of view, and Fox News is more conservative. Now, the one thing none of them do is ever touch upon the Vatican. So you're getting not all the truth from these guys. So you have to kind of understand that, do they understand what's going on, or are they hiding this? What is their role? Now, the people that are on Fox News and CNN make millions of dollars. For example, Megyn Kelly has a contract where she's making $20 million a year. She does an hour show daily. Do these people really? Are they hiding something from you? I think they are. And why? If you don't get the whole truth, then how can you basically understand really what's going on? You can't. So what I'm suggesting is that I listen to these guys. I listen to the left and the right, and I can piece in where they're going, what's going on, where they're missing, what are they not giving us. So you have to kind of fill it in. Now, I'm not saying throw the baby out with the bathwater. There's many people that turn everything off because they realize the story of the Vatican, and many more people are catching on to it. And then they just decide that America is in the toilet, all these people shouldn't be listened to, and I'm not that way. I believe that you can't throw your country out the window. The country is not, the country is just a country. It's the people. And so there's a lot of good in this country. For example, I don't like when people burn the American flag, because I think about all the people that have died that went to their death trying to fight for what they believe was freedom, even though these wars have been orchestrated for a hidden agenda. You can't blame the people. They don't get the truth. And shows like mine, I'm not bragging, but I wish that people that talk about this stuff like I do, like Tony Alamo and Tupper Saucy, and a guy that I'm going to present to you today named Tom Remington, and I want to read something that he wrote, and this will piggyback on what we're talking about. So we have Tony Alamo and his ministry being targeted by the government. He sits in jail for 175 years. Now I'm going to turn to a 5-minute clip that was on Fox News yesterday. Bill O'Reilly, who's a Fox News commentator, who's had the largest cable show for the last 20 years, very wealthy man. And, I listen to Bill, and there's a lot of good things he says. He does leave out the Vatican, and he will go on. He's a Catholic, and he doesn't seem to want to expose the inner workings of the Jesuit order, things like that. So we have to understand that. Now, his motives, I'm not going to question right now. But I am going to question what's going on with Tony Alamo Ministry, why he's not getting a fair shake and this ministry isn't. Because on the O'Reilly Factor yesterday, host Bill O'Reilly was joined by Ryan Morrow, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project. Now, what is the Clarion Project, folks? What is it? Okay, I'm going to tell you in a second here. The Clarion Project, Morrow is basically looking at Islamic extremism, and O'Reilly wanted him on to pick out the 5 top organizations linked to Islamic extremism that are located in the United States. Now, one such example is the hamlet of Islam-berg in the town of Hancock, New York. Now, this is located 145 miles northwest of New York City. The secluded community is home to an unknown number of Muslims inspired by a Sufi cleric, and I won't give his name, it's too long. Morrow said this compound is spread across 60 to 70 acres. Now, he showed O'Reilly a video given to him by law enforcement source that shows members marching with rifles in apparent guerrilla warfare training. as the group Muslims of the Americas is not designated as a foreign terrorist organization, they are able to operate in the United States with little more than FBI monitoring, Morrow said. Now, I'm going to play a 5-minute clip that was on Fox News yesterday. Now, the point I'm trying to make is, why is the government allowing these guys to have weapons, to run around in a 60, 70-acre compound? And this isn't just one group. There's a number of them. O'Reilly just asked for 5 of them. And so I'm going to play this 5-minute clip, and you're going to see the hypocrisy. Why is our government allowing this, but yet will take down a Christian ministry who had no weapons, who never used drugs, who was teaching these kids a healthy environment? Why? Because I have a feeling it has something to do with the hidden agenda that's going on here. So let me play this clip. It's 5 minutes, and you're going to get an idea of what I'm talking about. Here's Bill O'Reilly.
Tonight, there's a group called the Clarion Project, which is dedicated to exposing the dangers of Islamic extremists. Recently, we asked Clarion to pinpoint for us 5 dangerous situations here in the USA. With us, Ryan Morrow, National Security Analyst for the Clarion Project. So you have many, many more than this, but we picked the top 5 that I think will be of interest. The first one is in Hancock, New York, about 145 miles northwest of Manhattan. What's going on in Hancock?
There's actually a place there called Islam-berg. They have a sign that says, "Welcome to Islam-berg." It's about a 60, 70-acre large compound, and it's the headquarters for a group called Muslims of the Americas that follows a radical cleric in Pakistan. The videotape that's on the screen is something that was given to me by a law enforcement source showing them engaging in guerrilla warfare training at that Islam-berg compound.
Okay, so Islam-berg, upstate New York. They have weapons. It's private property.
Right.
All right. They're training on the property. Can the authorities do anything about it?
Beyond monitoring them, no, because they're not listed as a foreign terrorist organization. FBI documents that we've obtained do show that they consider them a threat, but because they don't have that designation, they're able to operate in the U.S. And we have a dozen.
Do you know how many people are up at this compound?
That specific one, no, but the estimates of the number of members that this group has across the country, they say they have 22 of these places across the country, is somewhere around 3,000.
Training ground. Wow. All right, now we have the Dar el-Hara Islamic Center in Falls Church, Virginia. What's going on there?
Right, a history of radical leadership over there. Anwar al-Awlaki used to be their imam before he went over and he joined Al-Qaeda. And there was even videotape that was taken of the current imam speaking recently in Virginia, where he specifically said that Muslims should be first in line to get the arms for jihad.
All right, so at this center in Falls Church, there's an imam there presently, right, who wants to get arms for the jihad.
He preaches that is a requirement upon Muslims.
Wow. All right, the third one is one I mentioned last night in Brooklyn, New York, with John Stossel. It's the Masjid at-Taqwa Mosque. What's going on here?
That's led by Siraj Wahaj, one of the most radical imams in the country, yet he manages to be a rock star speaking at Muslim events across the country,
yeah,
even college campuses.
He's going to be in Dallas this weekend in Garland, Texas for a big conference, and I brought that up to the imam we had on last night, who didn't seem to think this guy was so radical.
He didn't address that. He was addressing the issue of whether he's been prosecuted, which is a whole nother thing. If you look at what he's been preaching, it's sheer anti-Americanism, turning America into a caliphate, and his mosque was even suing the NYPD because they were conducting surveillance on it.
That's right, that de Blasio pulled off. So this is a bad hombre, as I said to Sasa last night. Then there's another one in New York City. This is in Jamaica, Queens, the Islamic Circle of North America. What's this all about?
This is a major organization with origins in Pakistan with an Islamist group over there. Polls show that only about 2% of Muslim Americans say that this group represents them, but they're one of the most well-organized there. One of the leaders was actually indicted on war crimes in Bangladesh, and we have a copy of one of their teaching guides that tells Muslims to engage in deception in order to advance the jihadist cause and to implement Sharia governance.
All right, then this comes out of Queens, right? Out of this mosque. That's the headquarters. That's the headquarters. All right, and finally, and this is the most controversial one, you have CARE, the Council on American-Islamic Relations, and they've been on this program. They do a lot of media. And what are you saying, that they're a dangerous group?
Yes, they are basically a political influence operation of the Muslim Brotherhood, according to the Justice Department, not according to me. They specifically listed CARE as an entity of the U.S. Muslim Brotherhood, specifically its Palestine committee that was secretly set up to advance the Hamas agenda. And the FBI wiretapped their leaders in 1993, talking about setting up CARE so they could influence the media in their direction.
Well, and that's what they do. They come out and they say, look, we're moderates, and we just want to give you our point of view. But you say that they're directly tied into terrorist groups?
Into the Muslim Brotherhood, yes.
Which is a terrorist group.
Right, and Hamas is the Palestinian wing of the Muslim Brotherhood.
Okay. Now, final question is, this is pretty frightening stuff, but you would assume the FBI knows about all of this, if you know about it, and the Justice Department is surveilling them and have them under control. And in a free and open society, this is the rest of them that we didn't talk about. This is the map that all of these have radical Muslim mosques or operations in all of those towns. And it's amazing. Look at them. Sacramento, outside of L.A., Pittsburgh, Chicago, on and on. So my question is, should Americans be concerned, or is this under control?
It can't be under control just through monitoring them. And again, when it comes back to the issue of the ideology, which President Obama refuses to recognize,
yes,
that's the problem here. It's not just about the person that's setting off the bomb. It's about the overall ideology that combines mosque and state, that justifies jihad anywhere, and we need Muslim leaders to step up and fight against those interpretations. The most positive news I've seen is the poll that showed that these organizations have so little support among Muslim Americans.
Right. All right. Very interesting, Mr. Moreau. Thank you.
Okay, now, ask yourself this question. We know O'Reilly on the left and the right, the paradigm going on here, he's on the right. We have CNN on the left. We know they do not discuss the behind-the-scenes hidden agenda that the Vatican's deeply involved in, but let's forget about that for now. And I'm going to take this clip and some of the information that the Clarion Project has, and ask when we do this pardon, I'm going to ask them, why are you allowing these people to exist when they're carrying weapons, actually talking about jihad and caliphate against the American people? And when you see that map of all these places, it's all over the country. We got a serious problem. But then again, you're persecuting a Christian ministry? What's behind it? And I think I'm going to present a few things behind it in the second half hour. But we have to ask that question. And when we ask it to the pardon attorney, I just want to present this hypocrisy that's going on. Now, all they're going to say is, well, he was convicted of this horrible crime, but he was. If you look at the trial, he didn't do any. This is a trumped up, this is a trumped up charge that has been really designated to destroy Christians here who are talking about the Vatican. They don't present a danger. They're not carrying weapons. But they're being persecuted here by why we're allowing caliphate to exist right under our noses, which could destroy this country. It makes no sense unless there is a hidden agenda, policy to keep us at war, to keep us at chaos, and maybe that's what the Jesuits are all about. You're going to see very interesting things, though. We know the Jesuits involved with Obama's administration is filled with Roman Catholics and Jesuits. But we're going to look a little bit deeper. And I'm going to start out with the show I did yesterday and talk again about Fethullah Gulen. That wasn't even mentioned on the O'Reilly show. And all the schools and what he is all about. And then get into a couple other things. In the second half hour of the Investigative Journal. Back in 3 minutes.
The program you are listening to is 100% sponsored by you, the listener, on this First Amendment Rights Media channel. You will notice that there are few commercials on this radio network. There's a good reason for that. Corporate advertising dollars come with strings that limit program content. So without your help, these programs cannot continue on internet or our several affiliates. If you benefit by the educational law programs, we ask you to give. If you are admonished or nurtured by the Bible and ministry programs, we ask you to give. if some voice a cause that you are passionate about, we ask you to give. If you believe in any of these, we ask you to support them as you would a missionary on a continual basis, as if giving a tithe for missionary radio. These programs are not commercially viable and must be supported by those faithful to the cause of truth. Look for the button to sponsor your favorite programs at our listen and schedule pages on the internet. Then, when you subscribe, we will send you the last quarterly MP3 CD of that program immediately, and continue to do so with each new quarter. We will also give you unlimited archive access to all of our programs. We're asking you to give much less than a tithe, so that you may also send support directly to a particular program host, cause, and anywhere else the Spirit may lead you. Do all to the glory of our God and Creator, for His holy nation, the only kingdom that will last forever. Thank you for listening.
The book of Revelation says, "The spirit of prophecy is the testimony of Jesus Christ." This is at the very heart of FirstAmendmentRadio.com. In that spirit, we have created the Prophecy Reality News app for all of your mobile devices, streaming First Amendment Radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Available for your Apple, Android device, and smartphone, absolutely free. Get the Prophecy Reality News app installed today, so you can listen to First Amendment Radio wherever you are. The Prophecy.
Since the beginning of time, kings have sought it, nations have fought for it. It has been traded, it has been borrowed, it has been purchased, it has been stolen. There's a reason for it. To secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and to our posterity. Invest with the security of gold and silver. Call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188 or visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net. Listen to Financial Survival with your host Melody Cedarstrom right here on FirstAmendmentRadio.com at 4 p.m. Eastern or 1 p.m. Pacific Time. Visit discountgoldandsilvertrading.net or call Discount Gold and Silver Trading at 1-800-375-4188. Toll free 1-800-375-4188.
Okay, we're back for the second half hour of the Investigative Journal on this November 30th, 2016 day on our calendar. And why, if you listen to the last half hour, why would our government, our FBI, all of our authorities allow these radical Muslim groups to form compounds in, 30, 40, 50 different cities? And they got even pictures of them carrying weapons, practicing for guerrilla warfare. They allow this to go on. But yet they'll take a Christian ministry who was the exact opposite, who was doing good works, and they try to destroy it. And to this day are doing the same thing for what? And putting an innocent pastor in jail for 175 years for crimes he didn't commit, but that's okay, right? Well, we're going to present this hypocrisy to the pardon attorney, and we better get some kind of answer, because we're in deep trouble. And you can see it right now. And the point I'm trying to make is, yesterday's show even amplifies what we're talking about today. Because I was talking to Leo Zagami from Rome, and we're talking about our knowledge of Fethullah Gulen going back a decade, when he was spreading radical Islam to Norway and all this, even to his home country, Turkey. That's what this whole coup was about in Turkey, and we got into this. And he's allowed here in America to live here since 1999 legally, create all these charter schools under the guise of moderate Islam. And we fund him to $150 million and more a year. And all these visas that he's allowed to bring over these people. It's incredible. Now, guess what's happening now? Just recently, lawyers for a prominent Muslim, who we're talking about, Fethullah Gulen, they're warning President-elect Trump not to pressure the U.S. judiciary to deport their client to Turkey after a leading Trump advisor, that's General Flynn, who's going to be the national security advisor, compared the elderly preacher who's allowed to live here and funded by America. He considers him to be like Osama bin Laden. Now, Gulen is accused by his native Turkey and the leader of that country, Erdogan, of plotting the failed coup that the Muslim majority country that was going on, that tried to kill Erdogan, and accused him of being behind it along with the Americans and the CIA. Gulen, who has millions of followers worldwide, lives in Pennsylvania, of course denies this, and he's protected by the Obama administration and our government. Now, Turkey wants us right now to put Gulen under house arrest because they fear he's going to flee the country or be hidden by and I know Erdogan thinks that America's protecting Gulen. And our media gives, what's really fishy about this whole story is our media depicts Erdogan as the radical and Gulen as the moderate, when it's completely opposite. Gulen was there in Turkey trying to overthrow the Turkish government, which, if you understand a little bit about that part of the world, that was one of the few countries, Islamic countries, that wasn't radical. That's why we have bases there. We have a military base there. I called it the last firewall. And our government in July tried to overthrow this and allow radical Islam to grow. What do you think? And who's behind this? We talked yesterday about all these immigrants moving. Look at what's happening to our country, and the Pope and the Obama administration seem to allow these people in. They allow them to carry weapons in these compounds, and that's okay. And we talked about how the Pope and the Italian government are working together, and the Pope and the German government, the French government, allowing this mass migration to basically do what? Destroy Christianity, destroy the Western civilization, and one step closer to what we talk about here, one world government, a one world order. And it's going on right before our eyes here. And what are we doing about it? At least we should get this show. If you're listening to this show, get it out to as many people as you can, because we have to inform people. Now, when you listen to what I presented on Fox News and you listen to CNN, you're never going to get behind the scenes of what's really going on. And I wanted to mention this. We know Obama's administration is filled with Jesuits from Georgetown and all over. But what about the Trump administration so far? And we're going to talk about that right now. Okay, so what about Trump and his Jesuit connections? And we know that he's a very successful billionaire businessman, went to Fordham for a couple years. There's Jesuit ties there. But what about the people that are close to him? Who are they? Well, we have Mike Pence, the VP elect, and he's described himself as a self-described evangelical Catholic. Now, what is an evangelical Catholic? We discussed that the other day. Chris Christie, governor, very close to the governor of New Jersey, very instrumental in his campaign. He's a Roman Catholic. Newt Gingrich, close to him, Roman Catholic, Council on Foreign Relations. Michael T. Flynn, it's the general we're talking about. He's Roman Catholic. Rudy Giuliani is going to play a big part in the Trump administration, whether it be Secretary of State or something else, Roman Catholic. He could even be considered a 9/11 coadjutor, alleged Knight of Malta. Jared Kushner, that's his son-in-law, who's going to play a huge role. He's a fan of the Count of Monte Cristo, a story about the Jesuit general getting revenge on all of the order's enemies during his suppression. What about Steve Bannon? He's going to be one of his biggest advisors. He's the chief strategist, the senior counsel counselor for the presidency of Trump, former executive chair of Breitbart News, Jesuit trained from Georgetown. Lou Barletta, Roman Catholic. Chris Collins, Roman Catholic. Tom Marino, Roman Catholic. Devin Nunes, Roman Catholic. Anthony Scaramucci, very instrumental in his campaign, Roman Catholic. Eric Trump, Jesuit trained from, he went to Jesuit school too. Ivanka Trump went to a Jesuit school. David Malpass, Jesuit trained from Georgetown. Keith Kellogg, trained by the Jesuit at Santa Clara. Michael Cantazaro, trained by Jesuits of Fordham. Andrew Bremberg. These are all people going to be involved in this administration, and I want to thank one of my listeners for compiling this for me. And this is just the tip of the iceberg here. We got James Carafano, Jesuit trained from Georgetown. Ed Follner, Roman Catholic, former president and founder of the Heritage Foundation, Jesuit trained from Regis and Georgetown. Ken Blackwell, Jesuit trained, Xavier University. Boris Epstein, Trump foremost spokesman, Jesuit trained from Georgetown. So we have a Jesuit presidents, whether it's on the left or the right, don't we? And don't let that dampen your hopes, though, because we can't be sure exactly what's going on, but we know that there's something behind the scenes, and we're going to try to discuss that right now. And the best way to do it is by looking back a bit, and looking back into history, and also looking to a friend of Tony Alamo's, Tupper Saucy knew Tony, and we talked about this years ago before Tupper died. And of course, I have one of the few interviews you'll find of him. Several of them were destroyed, but I still have one, and I want to get to that in a second here. Now, I interviewed Tupper Saucy back in 2006, and you can get that. You can get that interview if you Google Greg Anthony interviews Tupper Saucy. You can listen to it again. However, much of the things I talked about with Tupper were in phone conversations, things that, just were unreal looking back 10, 11 years. And I remember discussing Tony with him, and they had similar views on many things. And he understood why Tony was being framed, and he told me very simply that he was affecting the status quo. And the Jesuits don't like that. They don't like to be exposed for what they are. Now, there's a guy named, what's his name? Tom Remington. Okay, and I want to get to Tom in a minute here. Now, Tom has a website that you should go to, okay? And his website, just go to tomremington.com, and he took the time to take that interview and transcribe it so you can read it if you like. But he did have a comment about Tupper Saucy and a comment about my interview, and I want to read that to you. And I think this will explain a little bit of what's going on behind the scenes to help you understand this story. Now, he says this in May 16th, 2012. He put this out. And I should get Tom on the show. But below, he says, is a radio interview done by Greg Anthony with F. Tupper Saucy a few months before we lost Tupper. Now, he goes on to say this. In September 1769, this is Tom talking, Prince William appointed Mayor Amschel Rothschild of nearby Frankfurt to transact some of the financial affairs in the capacity of the crown agent. Aware that the Rothschilds are an important Jewish family, Tom looked them up in an Encyclopedia Judaica and discovered that they bear the title Guardians of the Vatican Treasury. The Vatican Treasury, of course, holds the imperial wealth of Rome. The imperial wealth grows in proportion to its victories in war, as the Jesuit empowerment regime military implies. The church at war is more necessary than the church at peace. So think about what's going on in our country now, and the wars going on all over the place that seem to be on the horizon. Now, the appointment of Rothschild gave the Black Papacy absolute financial privacy and secrecy. Who would ever search for a family of Orthodox Jews for the key to the wealth of the Roman Catholic Church? I believe this appointment explains why the House of Rothschild is famous for helping nations go to war. It is fascinating that Mayer Rothschild's sons grew into the family business. The firm took on the title Mayer Amschel Rothschild, he gives the name, which gives us the notary of Mars. It isn't Mars, the Roman god. It's Mars, the Roman god of war, whose heavenly manifestation is the red planet. There is powerful things going on here, and there's hardly an acre of an inhabitable earth that hasn't been affected in some way by the Vatican and their desire, and I'm adding this, to control the world again. International finance and banking are not primarily Jewish. Many of the most powerful banking interests in the world are run by Gentiles. Now, I called them a long time ago Papal Court Jews, and I remember when I was first starting out, I'm talking now, not Tom, I started to heavily talk about the Vatican on a very large internet station, which basically still exists today, Genesis and Republic Broadcasting Network. And boy, they didn't like it. So what they did is they brought on a guy from the American Free Press, another controlled opposition paper that I used to write for, to counteract my show, and they blamed everything on the Jews. And so it was quite obvious to me what they were doing. So anyway, one of the most powerful forces in the international banking is the Knights of Malta, a Roman Catholic military order, controlled by the Jesuit Superior General. Sadly, and this is Tom speaking, sadly, even a certain segment of the alternative media helps to propagate the lie that the Jews run international banking. And that's exactly what I run at. I'm talking now. I ran up against this when I was doing my radio shows 10 years ago. And interestingly, one of the titles of the Rothschild banking dynasty is Guardians of the Vatican Treasury. The Jews as a people have been used for centuries as a scapegoat by these international banksters and their secret societies, such as the Jesuit-controlled Knights of Malta. To label the Jews as running banking, Hollywood, etc., is to throw out the proverbial red herring, designed to throw us off the scent of the real controllers of this world. And I think Tom's right on there. And he goes on to say, Tupper Saucy has given us a lesson in what real history writing is all about. And such lessons are hard to come by. Saucy firmly establishes, once and for all, how deep the plannings of societal takeovers can go. In my 20 years as a reporter, I have read many books that provided useful information, but I have read only a few that showed me how to sift through great amount of information to arrive at a platform from which I could continue to understand these isolated facts. Rulers of Evil is one of the few. Let me put it this way. Reading Rulers of Evil is 4 years of postgraduate work at a university that should, but does not, exist. Now, very good words, Tom. Very good. And then he presented my transcript. He said, this is a transcript of the interview done by Greg Anthony Szymanski, did with Tupper, author of Rulers of Evil, on 20th of June 2006. And he can be heard at First Amendment Radio. And I'm still there. Yes, that was one I did. I did several others that have been destroyed by some of the other controlled radio stations I work for. But there's a common thread here. We see the persecution of Tupper Saucy, and when we talk, Tupper was charged with false IRS charges, just like they did with Tony Alamo. And the thread is they both were talking about who the real rulers of evil are and how they're connected to the Vatican and how our government is. And that's the story you don't get on Fox News or CNN. And that's the story you don't get in many of these alternative stations who dwell on all of this The things that drive your emotions, pedophilia, all this kind of stuff. And that's part and parcel of the group we talk about too, but we have to understand that this organization functions better as a church at war, a country at war, than at peace. And that's what they're up against. That's what we're up against right now. That's what's going to happen to us right now. That's why in our history, our country has been at war all but, 20 years of our 200 and some years of existence? And do you think it's going to stop? Because we don't get it. Most of the American people need to understand this story. This is the key to it. The key to opening the door. That's why you should go and listen. You can go to ABOMINATION right now and get many articles on it. You can still go and find Rulers of Evil and read that book. And start learning. You can get your own postgraduate degree by yourself without going to Jesuit-trained schools. And that's what's going on in our country. If you look back at the history of Jesuitism, and these schools go back to the 15th century. Their control of theater back then, how they wanted to take control of education all over the world. And when you really start getting into it, you'll start understanding that there's a good possibility, and probably a strong probability, probably even 100%, that the Vatican did create Islam. That's why, if you listened to my show yesterday, you heard how me and Leo were talking about stories we did in the past when these cardinals, basically behind the scenes, are converting to Islam. And why this word Chrislam is being pushed by the Jesuits in many parts of the world. You don't see it here. But what you're seeing here is a radical growth of Sharia law behind the scenes in these compounds that we presented earlier in the show that the government is allowing. That's why everything that Obama did in his deal with Iran and his foreign policy, as well as his domestic policy, wasn't to put America first, was to put Islam and that Jesuit idea of destroying the West now. Because they can't get control of this world without America falling prey to this hidden agenda that started out a long, long time ago. And if we start really looking at it, we can see their influence in even creating this country and their evil hand behind the founding fathers. Some who were in their pocket to begin with. So what we have now is a lack of understanding of this huge story, and that's the missing piece. That's why Tony Alamo sits in jail. And hopefully we can present this to the pardon attorney and we can get some action quick, because there is a window of opportunity here that we have to take advantage of. And I hope, look, when we look at this from my point of view, and this show brings together both the spiritual component that's at work here as well as the secular, bringing it all together so that you can understand it better. And there are many people out there, like Walter Veith, who gets it. You can go to even Tom Fress on this radio station, Nicholas Arthur, he gets it. There's some people that really do get it, and many of them are silenced. And it is my hope that we can touch as many people as we can and see what's going on in this country so that we can at least understand. And we can live better with it when we understand it. Now, the point I'm trying to make is we have, the one thing that upsets me is we don't know the time frame. Every generation, at least in modern times that I've researched, had people saying that the end times were going to happen, in 1500, 1600, 1700, 1800. Only God knows when it's going to happen. And we have people today who are living with this idea that the world's going to end tomorrow. We can't be sure. I don't live that way. I live to go on until God tells me my time is up. He's the only one that knows. We can look at the prophecy, but we can't predict the exact time frame. So don't live your life as if tomorrow's the last day. And what I mean by that is, don't live your life like you're going to wake up and the end times are there. I mean, we don't know the time frame. We can say that there are many signs that showing us that this is, the end is near, but we don't know for sure. So you have to kind of, in a sense, I went through a period where I understood all this stuff and I was very depressed. I'm not depressed anymore, and I hope that people understand what I'm saying. Once you realize this, there's kind of a happiness that comes over you, that you understand something, and you want to get it across to people that are willing to listen. I don't like to waste my time with people who basically all they want to do is, well, there's a lot of these controlled opposition people that are here to shut you up, so we can deal with that. But I don't like to deal with people who have their minds so set that they think they know it all. And the one thing I want to mention is that, getting back to what I started the show with, when you go to that petition to free Tony Alamo, a man who's been imprisoned falsely because of the views, the things that Tupper Saucy talked about, the things that many people that I mentioned on this show, Tom Remington and others, talk about. The only difference was he spread this thing, and boy, he opened the door to, he was getting this out to millions of people, and the Vatican couldn't have it. So let's see, go to that petition, read it, check the story out, check the news that you'll get from the mainstream, which basically we're in cahoots with the, people that want this information kept silent, and make up your own mind. But if you agree and you want to help us get him out of prison, sign that for us. And we'll talk more about this in the weeks to come, because we're going to present this to the pardon attorney for Trump when he gets in office. See you tomorrow.
Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.
I know you all want answers, and believe me, so do I, and I'll do my best to get them.
Despite Nicolas Cage's promise to do his best to get left behind rapture answers for us, don't hold your breath. Not everyone believes Left Behind is true prophecy. Some may even regard as conspiratorial the mainstream re-release of the Left Behind movie, with actor Nicolas Cage portraying the main character, as an attempt to further reinforce in the minds of all this perception of false prophecy, in order to condition the masses for the play about to begin. If you want true Bible prophecy answers, get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. The author exposes the Latin rapture origin, the 7-year tribulation deception, true Bible revelation of Daniel's 70 weeks, the abomination of desolation, the restrainer, America in the Revelation, the image of the beast and the mark of the beast, and the truth about God's chosen people, and so much more about Bible prophecy. This book will shatter the Left Behind paradigm of future events. Get the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. Visit crosstheborder.org, CROSS, crosstheborder.org, to get your print, EPUB, or PDF version of the book, The Rapture Will Be Canceled. That's crosstheborder.org.